Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest set of updates for the women's Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, per the last 2 weeks of action we've seen, it pains me to say that, at least momentarily, per the rules that govern the list, Amendia Serranio has been bumped off the number 2 spot, ejected from the list, at least momentarily. This is just like what we saw after their first fight. Per the rules that govern the list, no fighter coming right off a loss is allowed to maintain a rank, not until such a time as they can get themselves back in the winner's bracket. The saving grace for Amanda is that she's still a reigning champion. She's still in position of 2 alphabet titles in the featherweight division, so given her body of work and everything she's accomplished already, it won't be hard for her to get back on. All she's got to do is win her next fight, whether it's against Katie Taylor or somebody else, some girl at featherweight. But didn't you say you thought she won the fight? I did, but the list is not intended to reflect my feelings, who I feel won a fight, who I feel deserve to win. The list is intended to reflect the official outcomes, and so officially, Katie Taylor won the fight. A provision that acts as a safeguard against personal preferences and biases, favoritism, the kind that we see on so many other pound-for-pound lists. These provisions are designed to take the feelings out of it, everybody's feelings, mine included. Case in point, Clarissa Shields, who everybody knows I can't stand, everybody knows I don't like, she ascends from the number 3 spot to the number 2 spot via the process of elimination. No, you won't have to have been on this channel very long to realize I don't like Clarissa Shields. I can't stand her. But that shouldn't affect where she's ranked on a pound-for-pound list. It's not a list of my feelings, who I like better than someone else. The governing criteria acts as a safeguard, a countermeasure to take everybody's feelings out of it, mine included. Tina Ruprecht comes in at number 3. This was trickier than I thought it would be, because initially I felt that Tina should come in the bottom tier, somewhere in between Gabby Fundora and Dina Thorsland, or Michaela Mayer and Gabby Fundora, just somewhere down there. But when I thought about it, Tina beat a fighter that's currently ranked on this list. She beat 3-division champion Yo Costa Valle years ago, and that's not all she did. That's not all she's done. You know, that she reigned as WBC minimum weight champion for some years, and this one, she debuted at a new weight, a second weight, back in January, and not only that, she just unified a title there. Currently, she's only 1 belt away from becoming undisputed champion. 1 fight. You might think that such a high ranking should go to a more familiar face, a more familiar fighter like, say, a Savannah Marshall or a Franchon Cruz. But the reality of those fighters is Savannah hasn't fought since she beat Franchon well over a year ago, and Franchon hasn't fought since she beat Jadeja Green approximately 1 year ago. Inactivity is counting against the both of those fighters, who might be accomplished. You might be familiar with them, but they haven't fought. They haven't fought at all this calendar year. And if you follow the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, you'll know that inactivity counts against the fighter's rank. You can't be sitting around doing nothing while everybody else is fighting. It's not just what you've done that gets you on the list. It's also what you're doing now. You have to show that you've still got it. And we haven't seen Savannah since July of last year. It's been that long. We haven't seen Franchon since December of last year. Practically a year of inactivity. With so much going on in the sport, it wouldn't be just, it wouldn't be prudent to allow any one of those 2 fighters to maintain a rank on this list for not fighting when there are fighters that are. Tina Ruprecht, who comes in at number 3. You don't think that's kind of high? Well, somebody who's not familiar with Tina Ruprecht might, but Tina Ruprecht has been one of the best women boxers in the sport for many, many years now. This just solidifies that argument, that not only did she beat a fighter that's on this list, she has since added to her legacy not just successful title defenses, but debuting at a new weight and unifying there, all in the same calendar year. If you've actually seen Tina. Oh, she's not just a fan-friendly fighter, a fun fighter to watch. She really is one of the best fighters out there. Though you would never know it from the sparse coverage that many women boxers get. What boxers do get covered No, it's usually the same pool of names. It's usually the same girls, just in a different order. When there's a lot more out there,
Tina's number 3.
so maybe if it looks like she's ranked a little bit too high, it's in the absence of Amanda Serrano.
If not for the governing criteria, Amanda would be at number 2, Clarissa would still be at number 3, and Tina would come in at number 4. If it's stacked up that way, then it might make a little bit more sense, but the rules are what the rules are, and they are in place for a reason.
You have to try to be objective and as impartial as possible. Otherwise, all you're doing is playing favorites. And everybody knows Amanda Serrano is one of my favorites.
And everybody knows Clarissa Shields is not.
So it wouldn't be much of a pound-for-pound list if I just spent all my time playing favorites. Thus, these are the momentary updates to the women's Ring IQ pound-for-pound list.
Hey, Barrios, espero que todo está bien. Yo estoy listo para esta pelea. Seguramente va a ser una gran pelea para la gente. Aquí en Londres o ahí en América, yo estoy listo y voy a venir preparado. Avisa a mi equipo si estás preparado. Vamos.
Goddamn shame that Conor Benn, a Brit who was raised in Australia, speaks better Espanol than Danny Garcia, Ryan Garcia,
Edgar Berlanga.
many a Jono Sabo here in the United States. I have to say, I really hate Jono Sabos.
Ugh.
But you know, he took to his social media to continue to call out boxer Barrios, Mario Barrios, reigning WBC welterweight champion, and it's looking more and more like that's the fight that he's gonna have. His name has been attached to 2 potential matchups, a Chris Eubank Jr. fight at 160 that I'm not crazy about, and a Mario Barrios fight at 147, which I would prefer.
Why?
If Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward proved something to us all so many years ago when they initially met, it's that they don't need to be pound-for-pound fighters to put on a great fight, an amazing fight, what is now a classic fight, a classic trilogy.
You don't have to conjure up 2 pound-for-pound fighters or even the best 2 guys at a given weight to put together a great fight, and that is the lens I view this fight in. No, Mario Barrios is hardly the best guy, the best champion at 147.
Conor is hardly the most proven, unbeaten up-and-comer at or around these weights, but stylistically, those 2 guys mesh.
Their styles.
Of course, the Chris Eubank Jr. fight in the United Kingdom is comparatively a bigger money fight than this would be, but it would require Conor to go all the way up there to 160. And if he were to win, hypothetically, what would he do after that? Stay there?
He's not a middleweight. He doesn't have a middleweight frame.
This is a guy who never really finished making his bones at 147 that he should make such a broad leap up to 160?
I like the Barrios fight better.
And so as it pertains to the Mario Barrios fight, resident anti-doping watchdog Victor Conti
Him again.
took to his social media and said, Conor Benn in talks for world title fight ahead of his comeback. Ben has told Talk Sport that he is in talks to take on WBC welterweight world champion Mario Barrios and admitted that this could be the only fight that would sway him away from a meeting with his fierce domestic rival. We're in talks with Barrios for the WBC world title, and if there is anything that's going to make me pick over the Eubank fight, it would be the WBC world title. Conor Benn, Eddie Hearn, can either of you possibly confirm there will be random drug testing for a fight with Mario Barrios next year?
He's looking for confirmation already. The fight hasn't even been made yet.
My other question is, who the hell is Victor Conti to press Eddie Hearn or Conor Benn for confirmation?
Victor continued, boxing fans would like to know that there is testing in place. Thank you in advance.
So this is one of those situations where you have to read in between the lines. Why is Victor so Johnny on the spot over a fight that hasn't been made yet?
But he wasn't so Johnny on the spot with the Tevin Farmer versus William Zepeda fight. He wasn't as Johnny on the spot with that one. Is it because Matchroom wasn't promoting that one?
I don't understand.
Think about where we are. The fight between Conor and Mario has not been made yet, and Victor's already all over it. Whereas ahead of the Tevin Farmer and William Zepeda fight, according to Tevin, there was no anti-doping testing at any point. Not before the fight, and not after the fight. And Victor was pretty slow to the punch with that one. It took him a while.
It took for Tevin to take to his social media, well after the fight, to let it be known there was no anti-doping testing, and only then did Victor react. So why is he quicker to act over a Matchroom show than he is a Golden Boy show?
Money.
If I had to guess, it's because Victor and all his buddies at VADA know that nobody spends more money on anti-doping testing in boxing than Matchroom.
That's why he's always riding their nuts.
He doesn't keep the energy for the other game in town that he keeps for them because he knows, well, you're not going to have any luck with them. They're going to do what they're going to do irrespective of you. They don't care about you. But Matchroom does care about their image.
And they do spend a lot of money on anti-doping testing, contracting it, whether it's drug-free sport or VADA.
And what he wants to do is ensure that that money goes to VADA, even though the fight hasn't been made yet.
Seemingly out of the loop when it came to testing for Farmer versus Zepeda, but he's all over it when it comes to Conor Benn.
I think the Farmer versus Zepeda situation is a lot more egregious and would require more of Victor's attention.
Ideally.
Instead, he's back to riding Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn's nuts as if he is someone they need to answer to.
Get a load of him.
In all likelihood, there's gonna be anti-doping testing, but it won't be because Victor was piping up.
It's the virtue signaling that gets me. It's annoying.
There are enough outfits in the sport of boxing, staging matches, that ideally would require Victor's attention, if it is his intention to help clean up the sport, that you don't need to keep worrying about Conor. He has enough of a profile that there's gonna be anti-doping testing.
I have a question. Has anybody been testing Ryan since he got suspended?
From the time that the New York State Athletic Commission issued that suspension to Ryan Garcia, who did not clear his name like Conor Benn did, who did not have his suspension lifted like Conor Benn did, has anybody been testing that guy? I would like to see Victor get to that. Focus on that.
He's supposed to be participating in an exhibition of some kind with Rikuya Enpo. Is there going to be any anti-doping testing for that?
Well, that fight's not happening in America.
Connor's fight might not happen in America. That might happen in the UK.
The point being, Matchroom and Conor Benn don't need Victor Conti to sort their affairs. Their affairs are sorted.
I like the Barrios fight.
I think it makes for a fun watch. Mario's an action guy, so is Conor. Mario's a bit more experienced, but Conor's young, fresh.
Who wants the title?
Mario's got one, and he wants to take it from him. I look forward to seeing this fight. I hope they get it done. Further indication that Conor Benn won't be fighting Chris Eubank Jr. next. According to Rick Glacier, WBA middleweight champion Erislandy Lara looks like he'll be traveling to the UK this spring to defend his title versus Chris Eubank Jr. It'll be promoted by Boxer on Sky TV in the UK. Lara will be 42 in April. More details forthcoming.
So the PBC look to be outsourcing their champions? Mario Barrios to Matchroom, potentially. Lara to Boxer.
Carlos Adames to Riyadh. Riyadh season for a Hamza Shiraz fight. What's going on?
If Mario Barrios ends up fighting Conor Benn, it's likely because fighting Conor Benn, wherever you fight him, pays out more than unifying with a Montestanionis, another PBC fighter, another PBC champion.
The PBC has 2 world champions at welterweight and 2 more in the middleweight division, but making unification matches for them in-house is likely more trouble than it's worth.
If you're Mario Barrios, you make more money fighting Conor than you would unifying with a Montestanionis.
If you're Carlos Adames, you make more money fighting Hamza Shiraz than you would unifying with Erislandy Lara.
And if you're Erislandy Lara, you make more money boxing Chris Eubank than you would unifying with Carlos.
If you're the PBC, you make more money outsourcing those champions than trying to make fights between them. It would cost you more money to get them in the ring with each other than it would to outsource them, because if you outsource them, it doesn't cost you anything, and you still get a percentage of their purse. You get a percentage of whatever they make. It's also further indication that the PBC likely won't do that many shows next year, like they didn't do that many this one. Not if they're outsourcing their champions.
For them, that's less guys hounding you for a fight date, but that's also less guys to populate an undercard.
Send those guys somewhere else. Let those guys be somebody else's problem. Let somebody else pay for their fights. That's the look of it. You figure that if Shakram Gayasov were to beat a Montestanionis, if Conor Benn were to beat Mario Barrios, if Chris Eubank beat Lara and Hamza Shiraz beat Carlos, that would really loosen the PBC's grip on boxing and the world title picture.
They'd go from premier boxing champions to premier boxing contenders.
As that would be most of what they're left with if there's really anything left there. Good number of fighters have already started jumping ship. This is just further indication of what I've been telling you all along. What I told you would happen. When the money dries up and so do the fight dates, the fighters are going to go elsewhere because they have bills to pay, just like me and you. And they can't wait around for Al Heyman to sort them out with money he doesn't have or fight dates he doesn't have.
Is there any chance that they could find another broadcast partner in the coming year to give them the budget they're not getting from Amazon?
Well, anything's possible, but they just don't have that much to offer. That's the problem. What's the strength of the stable when so many fighters have left? What fighters remain really aren't big draws. What world champions you have, they may not be world champions for much longer. So thinking about a second broadcast partner, a new one, alongside Amazon, what do you have to offer them that they should invest in you?
Eubank versus Lara.
You know, I actually like this fight for Chris Eubank Jr. Chris Eubank Jr., underneath it all, knows who he is and what he is. A fighter who has largely benefited from his namesake.
Nepotism.
Erislandy Lara has competed at a much higher level for a longer duration of time than Chris Eubank Jr., and you could argue that he's always had a higher ceiling than Chris Eubank Jr., though at 42 years old, he could lose this fight. He could lose this thing in the United Kingdom.
Chris is younger than he is. Lara's in his early 40s.
This is in keeping with Chris Eubank Jr.'s MO. I remember years ago he fought a 37-year-old Arthur Abraham, guy who was past his best. James DeGale was 33 when they fought.
33 isn't old.
Though many would argue that James DeGale was past his best, and that his prime years were beaten out of him a few fights before that in the Badu Jack fight. That was a really hard fight, so that by the time he's fighting a Chris Eubank, he doesn't have much left. I think he retired off of that fight.
He did.
Now the guy you're fighting is older than those guys were. Erislandy Lara is going to be 42 years old if they get this fight over the line, and he's really only survived all these years by being sparsely active against pedestrian-level competition. You're talking about Greg Vendetti, Cornflake Lamanna, and Michael Zarafa.
That's what's keeping his career alive.
Fought Danny Garcia the last time we saw him, and stopped Danny Garcia for the first time in Danny's career. But what does that really mean when Danny didn't accomplish anything at middleweight?
Danny ain't been a good fighter since his days at 140. He was a gatekeeper at 147, a nobody at 154, and cannon fodder at 160. And these are the kind of guys that Lara's been fighting. This is what's kept his career alive, by not fighting that often, and when you do fight, come on. But I still like this fight between Erislandy Lara and Chris Eubank Jr. There's enough there that it's still intriguing, that even as old as Lara is right now, he was always a more well-schooled and talented fighter than Chris Eubank Jr.
And for Chris, this is his last crack at the apple, I think, at his age, because while he's younger than Lara, he's no spring chicken either. He's in his mid-30s.
This is his best bet to achieve world title honors before his career is done.
To become a world champion, this is his best bet.
It's piqued my interest.
Because Chris Eubank is younger, but Lara's more well-schooled. Because Chris will have home field advantage, but Lara can still punch. He can still crack.
Chris got knocked out by Liam Smith. Don't forget.
Bottom line, I like the fight.